So, Season of the Chosen has been out for 9 days now, guys. We've all had a lot of time to kind of sink our teeth into a little bit of the content of what's going on, as well as look at some brand new weapons that have come to the game. Now, this past week, guys, I know that I did state that I've got a lot of videos in the works. I do. This past weekend, unfortunately, I feel like I ate my own words when I say this, but I had no power at my house for 4 freaking days. We had a massive snowstorm come and roll my city where I live. So, unfortunately, I was not able to make any power. I actually had to pack up and leave for a good 3 or 4 days in order to wait out the storm, essentially. But we're back. We're back in the studio. We're back making videos. And today's actually a pretty good video because I wanted to dive in a detailed review on the brand new exotic that came with the Season of the Chosen. I think it's pronounced the Ticcus Divination or Ticcus or however the frick you want to call it. I'm not even sure, but it is what it is. Without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So starting off with the Ticcus Divination perks and what it offers. So if you take a look here, it comes with the intrinsic perk Sacred Flame. Hipfire in this bow fires multiple tracking projectiles. Targets marked by these projectiles explode upon death or when struck by another Sacred Flame explosion. And there's other perk trait on here called Casualty Arrows. Arrows fired while aiming down sights cause a Sacred Flame to instantly detonate. Precision hits with a perfectly drawn arrow increase the power of the detonation. So, meaning you really got to land those tracking arrows, which are really not hard to land. You only need one in order to really get the maximum damage out of this thing. And we're going to go into the catalyst a little bit as well later on in the video. I kind of want to talk about a difference in comparison to with and without the catalyst independently, because the catalyst is kind of a big deal for this bow in particular. Now, it's pretty sick to be able to just sit there and spam arrows like you're freaking Legolas out of Lord of the Rings, and you're just sitting there spamming that shit, just going and going and going and going. So inside of the Crucible, this thing is honestly pretty powerful. It's actually pretty decent on damage. Overall, you definitely got to make sure you hit those tracking arrows in order to really capitalize the damage on this thing. So that being said, the more players that run this, honestly, the better off you are. We did run a couple of games where we were rocking like 4 or 5 of these bows in one game, and we were just sitting there and spawn killing people because we would peek, unpeek, repeek, etc. And it was fantastic. However, I think this bow inside of the game and the community itself for PvP, I think this bow is not something, obviously it's not a meta weapon. Bows are not meta right now. That's just the way it is. It's just not meta. But I think this thing offers a support role. And when I say that, I mean it's like this. You can sit there and target a player, tag them with the arrow, and your teammate, as long as they hit them with a precision blow, they detonate, right? And they do damage. It actually does damage. And the other player on your team doesn't even have to be using the bow to get this to happen. Now, I don't know if this is by accident or if there's a bug or what the case is there, but it's pretty true. Like that's pretty accurate for the most part. Whenever a teammate shoots a person that is tagged with that bow, they immediately combust and they blow up, and it deals extra damage, making it easier for your teammate to secure the kill. So this weapon is a very support-based weapon, in my opinion, in terms of PvP. It's a lot of fun to use, though. However, aim assist is something that I'm a little like confused on a little bit, because if you don't have the best aim, I don't suggest using this weapon, okay? Because this thing is not forgiving in that department, because the tracking arrows, although they track incredibly well, they only do 9 damage an arrow. So you're not even really doing anything. You're like slapping the Guardian with a freaking napkin, you know? Like you're not really doing anything to the guy in terms of that. To really capitalize, you gotta have teammates around you, and you gotta be tagging them with the tracking arrows, and either you finish them off with the arrow or your teammate finishes them off with whatever they're using. But that's pretty much the only real way you can use this inside of Crucible. But honestly, it's a ton of fun. You know, walking around inside of a sixes game, a quick play game, and just dropping, like tagging people, and then them running away for a little bit, and then they come back. Because like when you get tagged by this thing, you're actually lit up for like 20 seconds. Like I swear it's like around 20 seconds. It's pretty long. It's got a lengthy duration attached to it. So that being said, you can sit there and tag multiple targets multiple times and then shoot one guy and combust all of them in a chain reaction of glory. It's fantastic. Now, the arrow itself, when doing the combustion explosion with the tracking arrows and you land both shots, this thing only does about 137 damage a crit. So it's not like it's crazy good, but it's not crazy bad. Again, this is a weapon that I'm classifying as a support-based weapon. That's literally what it is. There really isn't any other way of using it inside of the Crucible other than that. But that's not a bad thing. Honestly, more support-based gameplay is kind of something that I think Destiny lacks. And more you utility that gets added to the game to allow more support-based roles inside of a competitive playlist, inside of a sixes playlist, is good for the game overall, I think. Now, the catalyst. Let's talk about the catalyst really fast because it does greatly increase the amount of damage output that this thing can produce. Now, the catalyst states perfectly drawn arrows that detonate sacred flames increases arrow damage. Striking targets unaffected by sacred flame instead refreshes casualty arrows duration. Okay, so basically what this means is for every time you tag an opponent with the tracked arrows, it is basically just going to allow you to do extra damage with these sacred flame shots. So basically when you shoot them with the secondary arrow after they're already marked, you'll be able to do increased damage, which is actually pretty substantial considering the fact that this bow does pretty much kill everybody around 5 resilience or less for the most part. From what I've seen, it's about 5 resilience or less, and you'll be able to one-shot them after you tag them essentially. But you got to have the catalyst to make this happen. So the catalyst is something that I would definitely say is worth it. However, the grind that's behind this thing is actually very, very existential. Like it's probably one of the longest catalysts I've ever done, right up there next to like Sunshot catalyst, because the Sunshot took me forever to get that catalyst done as well. So if you're someone that is okay with the grind, this thing is a grind, but the catalyst is worth it because it definitely allows you to one-shot a guardian around 5 resilience or less, opposed to you not even being able to do that because you're only going to hit him for about 137 damage or so roughly if you don't have the catalyst equipped. So I would say it's worth it. Really, it is. But again, you got to remember this weapon it's all about fun. That's the biggest thing here. It's about fun. It's not about anything else because this is not a meta weapon. It's not what it's designed for. The bows are not a meta utility right now. They're not. So in the sense of just having enjoyment inside of a 6v6, quick play game, this thing's a lot of fun, dude. Like you can seriously get some crazy ass kill feeds with this. It's definitely got the power and damage potential to do so. So aside from the catalyst and just how ridiculously grindy that is, I do want to talk about PvE briefly. So with PvE in this game, there's a lot of just really simple pieces of content in this game that don't require much when it comes to just, a weapon of choice to use. And you know what? Oftentimes I actually found myself using this weapon inside of just strikes and other lower light level required, content. It's just fun to use and just constantly wipe, mob after mob after mob and just be able to, decimate and do a lot of damage, in that area, which is great. But I think this weapon is going to become something that I probably only start to use a lot more when it comes to like, match game. Match game is one of those things that basically you just need to make sure you're using the proper elemental weapon to break that elemental shield on the combatant you're shooting at, essentially, right? So with this, you're definitely going to need solar, right? That's definitely something that's going to be needed. And I think the elemental explosion part is just going to allow you to do a lot of extra damage to other targets, in the vicinity of the shielded target you're shooting at. But outside of that, I really don't think this is going to become some top tier, mountaintop recluse style weapon where it's just crazy, needed, as well as the fact that this is an exotic weapon. So because it is an exotic, it does take up that slot for the heavy damage potential in the heavy slot, things like Anarchy, that still do a ridiculous amount of damage. It's really hard. I mean, there are some good rocket launchers in the game now that can definitely compete with a lot of weapons in terms of damage output, but I don't know. I'm still up in the air with this weapon and the PvP or PvE respective because I don't know. It's very tough to narrow down where this thing sits yet inside of the game. It's not something that I see a lot of people using whenever I'm playing PvE content, and oftentimes after this past week, I definitely would only have been using it, this past week. I don't know if I'm really going to use it all that much more. It all depends in the PvE area because things like Palindrome exist, Shadow Price exists now. There's a lot of other weapons that are in this slot, that I would almost much rather use over this. But again, this is a fun weapon. That's what it is. It's a fun weapon. So aside from that, as long as you just understand that that's just what it is, I definitely give this thing, it's props in wave clearing in the department of around 7 stars or so. So I would definitely still, recommend, if you want something to do, go grind out this catalyst because because it actually does a lot of damage increase. I don't know what the exact damage tick number that is. I actually couldn't even figure it out for myself. So do with that as you will, but PvE, not something I'm super intrigued with, but sixes, man, I tell you, I'll hop into a Crucible game and just absolutely shred an entire 6-man with just this bow alone. It's a lot of fun to use. But guys, this is my own opinions and thoughts on the weapon for the Season of the Chosen exotic. Do let me know how you guys are liking the bow, if you're even using the bow, or even if you found time to even get that catalyst done, because I know it is a very lengthy catalyst to get done. But guys, this is my review on the Ticcus Divination. Thank you so much for coming and watching today's video, and I will see you guys in the next one.